Right. Now, I mean, yesterday there was a big fuss about our top achievers that did exceptionally well in 2015. Now, we heard these kids in the quintiles. Could you explain why we did that and what that means at the moment?
Sure. So the quintile system ranges from quintile 1, which is the poorest, meant to be 20% of schools in the country, all the way up to quintile 1, which is meant to be the wealthiest 20%. The reason why schools are classified like that is to target additional resources to poorer schools. So a child that's attending a quintile 1 school, that school actually gets more money when that child enrolls than the quintile 5 school would get when someone enrolls, often because the quintile 5 schools are charging fees. That being said, these schools that are getting additional funding are still the ones in the Eastern Cape, Limpopo. I mean, the vast majority of quintile 1 schools are found in the Eastern Cape, Limpopo and KZN. These provinces where we just said there's a matric pass rate of 50%. So I think that it's actually the right move of the department and the minister, and there's a number of things that the minister's actually done very well in her term. And one of them is to actually, rather than just say who the best learners, it's actually to say who are the best learners within their context. So if I'm a learner in a poor school in a rural area in the Eastern Cape and I manage to get 4 distinctions and I'm the best learner in this entire district, that needs to be celebrated.
Absolutely.
And just because there's a quintile 5 school, a very wealthy school, with rugby fields and swimming pools and all sorts of things, and maybe the entire class of 60 kids or the entire matric class gets 6 A's. For me, it's actually much more important to celebrate the success of the student that managed to succeed against the odds than it is to just highlight the fact that these good schools are getting good results.
Sure.
So I actually commend the minister and the department for highlighting and saying that context matters. It does matter. And students that get 3 A's even, I think if you've managed to get 3 A's in that kind of an environment, in that kind of a context, learning by a paraffin lamp in a shack at night, if you can get 3 A's in maths and science, we need you as a doctor in our country. And I think that's something that's worth praising, emphasizing, highlighting, drawing attention to. It's important.
Absolutely. So would you say, taking this into consideration, that we're still seeing quite a stark difference in terms of even by racial indicators that, in results and kind of the access that many of our learners are having?
Most definitely. So, I mean, when we look at the pass rates of students that are in the top quintile, there are almost no white and Indian students that are in the poorest 4 quintiles. So that's the poorest 80% of schools that are charging no-fee schools. Almost all of those students are in the top 5% of schools in terms of income, the income distribution of their parents, and also in terms of the functionality of the schools. So the tragedy in South Africa is that you still have a system that's largely segregated based on race. Now, that top part of the schooling system, that wealthy 10% of schools that are quite functional, schools that we would attend and be like, this is a good school, the ones that usually get 100% matric pass rate, even though they are quite racially mixed, black students, Indian students, white students, all the students from the different race groups in South Africa, the bottom 80% of students are almost entirely black students. And those students have no access to these wealthier and better performing schools. And I think the important thing to mention is you can only get into those quintile 5 schools if you can pay the fees. And who are the people that can pay the fees? The people that are already in the upper classes of society. So you have this system that's perpetuating itself, where if your parents are wealthy, they can send you to a good school, you go to university, you get a good job, and you send your children to those same good schools. Whereas if you're poor, you can't send your child to a school that charges fees, your child ends up being unemployed or in a very low-skilled job, and then they have to send their children to these low-fee schools, which are largely dysfunctional. I mean, I would say approximately 75% of schools in South Africa can be classified as completely dysfunctional.